The franchisor doesn't control the franchisee's business. They don't control their employment practices.
That's the misconception about franchising.
It's very difficult to unionize a bunch of small businesses that don't meet the qualifications to unionize. And franchise businesses overall take better care of the people that work throughout the network in general. I want to teach people how to do this in the right way where they can go on vacation, because I'm not even in it to make money. I don't actually give a fuck. Yeah, I'm all for free speech. Say it all day. All right, we're going to mix things up a little bit. I've had the franchisor perspective. I've had the franchisee perspective. Today, we're bringing a friend of mine that I've met through multiple of the IFA events, Pete. I'm going to do it again. Lacarnage. For Christ's sake. This is literally going to be my staple with every single episode, I think, is where I just mess up the names of the company and the names of the guests. We're just going to do that on purpose, I think.
That's branding. There you go. It's the trademark.
Pete's with Northeast Color, and Northeast Color is a sign company that focuses, I believe, specifically on franchise companies, but Pete will be able to give us a little more insight on that. Pete's one of their development representatives for the franchise space, and it's a pleasure to have you, Pete. You're a high-energy individual that I enjoy conversating with at these events, so I figured we'll share that with the world.
Dude, it's a pleasure to be here, Adam. Thank you so much, dude. It's been, I've definitely enjoyed listening to a few of your podcasts as well. So when you asked me, this was an absolute honor. So thank you, Adam.
Lately, I've been trying to work this in every single episode, so we might as well start with it.
Sure.
And that's the NLRB thing, right? So if right now, I think we're beyond writing Congress and Senate. Pete might be more versed on what's going on than I am, but I believe it's up to Biden at this moment. We're just waiting for him to sign off, because we expect it to go through the Senate, or it made it through. Do you know?
I think it's expected to go through the Senate soon, like in the next week. I might be wrong on that.
Yeah.
But
we'll Google it and put it up on the screen.
Yeah. I recall hearing that it was going to get vetoed by the executive branch. I'm not positive on that either, but wouldn't surprise me.
That's the fear, right? Yeah. And if that happens, I mean, I'm a franchisor, so this one impacts me quite a bit, especially in my specific model. The joint employer rule is not friendly to small business, and it is going to add new challenges to an already challenging process of building a business, and building a franchise company.
And what it is it's language that is defining joint employer as they're defining it in a way that it is saying that the franchisors are the employers of the employees of the franchisee. This sounds convoluted when I phrase it that way, but it's a way of twisting the language around. But I heard Matt Haller say recently, and I loved this line. He said, franchising and collective bargaining can coexist, but franchising and joint employer cannot coexist. And that's what it is. It's a way that would just, it yields too many liabilities on the litigation front. It makes it easier for a franchisor to be litigated against by unhappy individuals. It makes it harder to invest in a brand, is what it comes down to, which could kill small business or damage small business, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even understand the thought process there. When it really just boils down to an ignorance on franchising. The franchisor doesn't control the franchisee's business. They don't control their employment practices. We can make recommendations. We have systems that we ask that they follow, but they have to comply with their local labor laws. They have to decide the rates to pay their employees. All of this is done at the E level, at the individual that owns the business. If a franchisee buys a business from me, they buy my model, my system, it is their business. It's not my business. So they make those decisions in their business. It's absolutely absurd to think that I can be mixed into the ramifications of their business decisions. And it's not it's not selfish reasons that I want this to be prevented. The problem is I have to respond then as a franchisor, um, and insulate the brand as a whole in some way, right?
Sure.
So a franchisor has a decision to make if this goes through, and it's one of two things. They have to decide to be way more hands off. And if they become way more hands off in the franchisee's business, they're not going to be able to offer the support that a franchisee is paying for to help them develop their business. And the alternative option is to really get granular in their business and take way more control over it, which starts increasing the costs on the franchisor's side of things. It takes away a lot of the incentive for the franchisee to be a franchisee. And it turns us into essentially a corporate model to an extent. You're either going to develop into more of a corporate type structure, or you're literally just removing most of your support aspects. And that's horrible for the economy. It's horrible for business owners. Franchising is the best, one of the best, not one of, it is the best pathway for somebody that doesn't have experience scaling a business to open a business. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you haven't done it before, you are going to be more successful, assuming you buy a good franchise, buying a franchise versus starting one, right? Starting a business. So they're removing that, which is going to kill a large chunk of the economy. It's a horrible rule. And the people that are passing it, you and I met in DC. We lobbied on behalf. We sat in those rooms. Even Lauren, my last guest on the show, right? We all sat in these rooms and we had conversations with these people. We had conversations with their staffers. We had conversations with our elected officials. And I can tell you there are some people that understood it and were receptive, but the vast majority of the people that I spoke with, they were completely clueless on what franchising was. We couldn't get into a substantial conversation about the rule itself until we had to explain what franchising in general was. That's a problem. It's a problem in government in general. You have people making rules about something they don't even understand at all. We're not a political show, but it's mind-boggling. And then they passed this as a rule without going through any kind of process anyway. So they literally just made this up and said, "Hey, we're going to crush a large segment of the economy here, and we're gonna impact everybody's lives that is in that space in a negative way."
Right. It runs along party lines, unfortunately, in this hyper-partisan age that we live in, which I don't know if that's necessarily, I shouldn't say that makes this age that special, because that has happened before, but it does unfortunately run along party lines in many ways, which, again, a big part of our effort is to persuade those on one side of the aisle that might be in a groupthink kind of a mentality that this is supporting their communities. It's supporting their constituents. It is supporting diverse communities of all kinds that, that have a small business at the heart of the community. So it's,
well, that's what franchising is. Franchising is people, they really don't get it. They see, and this is an extreme example, but they see McDonald's, right? And McDonald's is probably actually a bad example because they have a lot of multi-unit owners they are a little bit bigger, more corporate. But let's use a different example then. Let's use your average franchise. People may, here, use one of mine. Hey, I like that. So if somebody owns a Refresh franchise in Columbus, right? They are not a corporate location for Refresh, right? That is a business owner that lives in Columbus that contributes to the community and is involved in that market. And, they're sponsoring the Little League team. They're doing all the things small business does in the area. Just because they're part of a bigger brand, they're still small business.
That's the misconception about franchising. That's what a lot of people get wrong, or when they misunderstand franchising, they're seeing the giant corporation mindset, right? It is small business owners across the country that are buying the rights to use a brand. Of course, as the saying goes, you're not going into business for yourself, you're going into business by yourself. No, all the way around. Not going into business by yourself, but for yourself in franchising. So you get, the support of a brand is the whole reason to do it. But again, it's misperceived by a vast swath of the population who just see the giant corporations. So that's a bbig part of the advocacy.
Yeah, I mean, and who's pushing the NLRB thing, right? And again, we'll just stick with this for a little while. We'll run with the NLRB because I haven't ranted about it properly. So the ones pushing it is organized labor, right? And I don't know why when they have the conversations, the IFA and everything, they don't just call this out. They don't call it for what it is. They'll discuss it, but they do it in a roundabout way. Like they don't want to say the word union. Well, that's what it is. It's literally the unions that are organizing this that have massive pockets, right? So they're the ones lobbying for this stuff to get rammed through. And there's a motive for it. And the motive is very, very simple. It's very difficult to unionize a bunch of small businesses that don't meet the qualifications to unionize, right? They can't force their way into all these independent franchises. But if they can convert the franchisor over to becoming liable as a joint employer, they can now go to the top of the franchise system and mandate it across the country. So it's like creating their version of, a new union for this franchise brand. Union advocates, people out there listening to the show that support unions and everything. Let me break this down though for you. The impacts to the economy and what's going to happen with these small businesses going those directions I was describing earlier, either getting really, really strict with them or really taking a hands-off approach with them to avoid that liability is going to impact small business growth, the growth in the economy and the opportunities as a whole to everybody, including those employers that you would argue to unionize, right?
Yeah.
And statistically, the IFA proved all this. They did the independent studies. They hired independent people to go out there and do these studies, and franchise businesses overall take better care of the people that work throughout the network in general, right? Of course, there's exceptions to everything, but they already pay above norms. Because it's part of the culture in franchising. You and I understand that because we're at these meetings and we're sitting in the rooms with the people that in the culture that's created in the franchise world.
Yep.
Right. And organized labor coming in and mandating this down onto them it's a money grab. It isn't about protecting the workers. And by the way, this is my opinion on unions, and I don't care if anybody knows or not. I am not a fan of unions.
It is funny how we somehow just drifted into this as our opening. Like we met in DC, and here we go.
So
before this, Adam and I were sitting there, what's our opening going to be? Yeah. We're like, well, we'll figure it out. We were sitting here riffing on some different subjects for the last half hour, and we didn't even know. And here we go. We ended up in that. But,
we can hop off. Let's move on.
I want to hear about your road trip, dude. So I was listening to Adam's last episode, and I'm as of someone who has driven cross country 4 times and has always got the itch to go on a road trip. I listened to Adam's last episode, and he mentioned he was going to be driving from Ohio down to Phoenix with all of his equipment, and here we are.
There's not a lot to report. I just took a few extra days. I didn't trust airlines with the equipment.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to fly with all this. Driving out was peaceful, man. They're hitting the open road and actually just having some peace and quiet by yourself and reflecting, your problem solving business stuff on the road, and you're thinking about next steps and strategy, and then there's just reflection period. If you're by yourself, if you've ever taken a road trip by yourself, they're all the same. Yeah. They're therapy, I enjoyed every second of it. I love driving through like the desert open areas, New Mexico and everything. New Mexico is beautiful. I'm going to hate on the state a little bit in the sense that the areas I went through were not really welcoming and they're a little run down. But again, I was just passing through, so it's just where I stopped.
Santa Fe is one of my favorite spots on earth. I got to get back there. It's like there's a magic in the air in Santa Fe because like the chimneys, they're all burning this pinon wood.
Okay.
And it's also at like 7,000 feet elevation. So it's just a magic city that obviously has a lot of history. It goes way back before, it's a lot of long ago, many centuries ago, there was settlements in Santa Fe. That's definitely a cool spot in New Mexico.
Never been.
Which I've hit on my road. Adam and I were talking before this too, as well, about, I was jealous of his road trip because I did one when I was 23 where I threw all my shit in the trunk and took off for the West Coast and was driving a zigzaggy route. And I didn't have GPS then because it was 2006. So I just had a big book of maps, a big atlas book, and I would just pick out roads.
He gave away his age there, folks, too. That surprised the hell out of me. He started talking about atlases and tell me, I mean, we're the same age.
Yeah.
Is that,
I'll be 41 in 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks.
I got to make better life choices, man.
I don't regret that. That was one of the best things I ever did. It was irresponsible, I guess, and on the surface of things, I just didn't have it. I was 23. I was a year out of college at the time, and I just said, I'm going to take off for the West Coast. I had read enough Kerouac and Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie, and I just wanted to do my own version of that. And so I got in the car with all my stuff. I think I had like 8 boxes of books. I don't know why I needed all these books with me, but brought them. The rear axles on the Jeep were just like scrunched to the ground. But I just picked out roads. That road looks funny, a zigzaggy little road, and so I went zigzagging through Appalachia. And
now, did you relocate out there, or was it just for travel?
It was actually both. I drove all the way across the country my parents were in Connecticut, is where I started from, and then drove again, zigzagged all the way down to San Diego, then drove north up the whole California coast. And ended up settling.
That's a beautiful drive.
Oh, dude. Big Sur, Route 1 is like nothing else. And you're on the side of a mountain with, the mountain continues, however far up it goes on one side of you. And the other side, the ocean is about 1,000 feet below you. Just a magical place.
You catch it during, a sunset. And it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
I wish I rode my motorcycle when I lived in California. I didn't pick up riding until I moved to Ohio. So most people start at a young age. I decided to pick it up in my 30s. But, definitely one of the best states probably to ride in. So that'll have to be on my next
There you
trip.
go.
I'll tell you about that one when I get back.
Bring an atlas with you. Put it in the backpack on your bike. And
dude, get a bike.
My wife would kill me.
Everybody tells me that. I encourage everybody, and they're like, well, I used to ride, and then I got married.
But yeah, I tell you, that Route 1 going up California, I ended up settling in Eugene, Oregon for half a year, and then came back east for a little while, went back to Boston, then ended up in San Diego for a year, which we discovered we both lived in San Diego briefly. And I did not actually enjoy living in San Diego. Believe it or not, everyone always says I'm crazy.
Me,
but it just wasn't my vibe. The winter was nice. It was mild winter, and when you're
a hoodie and flip flops in the middle of February is awesome.
That was my favorite thing about it. But yeah, there was something about the light. It just didn't vibe with me the way I thought it would. So came back east. I discovered I'm just meant to be an East Coaster, and
so you like the snow.
I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. I was shoveling it 2 days ago before I left Rhode Island. We just got this like slushy, heavy, wet snow, the kind that you really got to use your biceps to shovel. But so
that tripped me out. I thought I didn't realize how mountainous. I've driven through before, but I don't know why I didn't recall that. Like that was another part of the trip in New Mexico. Was I was expecting like, okay, once I get out of the northeast area, right, things are going to get warmer. It's going to be all good. I had like waters and stuff in the truck that I had to bring into the hotel over there, but I was like, I'll only have to do that the first night or two. Right. And then it'll be warmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I ended up staying in like the mountains, and I'm like, holy shit, it's actually colder here, in New Mexico than it was in Illinois.
I remember having this experience driving through New Mexico. Again, this is 2006, but I'm driving on the highways daytime, and I see road signs that say, this town, X number of miles, Las Vegas, like 40 miles. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't realize I was that close to Las Vegas. Well, there's a Las Vegas, New
Yeah.
Mexico, it turns out. But I didn't realize that as I'm driving. I'm like, I gotta go to Las Vegas. Why not? And you get closer and then you look at the Atlas book and there it says Las Vegas, New Mexico. And there's a college town there, but I still remember I went and I was chatting up some locals in this restaurant. And I was chatting with this old couple. I don't know, my memory just brings up this one little random thing, but it was this, they had to be in their 70s and they had lived in this town their whole life. And he said, the old man with his wife, and he said, when we met, she knew one word of English and it was, "You take me dancing." And I remember that sticks out in my memory, but it was just a really touching kind of a moment. But that was Las Vegas, New Mexico, as it turns out. But it was like a saloon restaurant type of thing, a very kind of Western experience. But
it's the little things like that just stick out to you throughout life, right? Like the little nuggets of information you get in the strangest places.
Man, this is it's fun talking about road trips. That's why I was jealous when you said you were
take one, dude. There's nothing stopping you. I encourage people to do that stuff all the time. Like I force my managers, not force, but and I push them to use their PTO like crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Some of them, I have a couple that they use it, but they don't use it in a healthy way. And again, I'm the last person to take advice about healthy work-life balance because I don't fucking have it. All I do is work, right? Like I'm on a road trip right now. What do? I bring podcast equipment and come do interviews, right? It's not, I rarely vacation. But I encourage them to, and I have a couple they'll take like a day off here. They'll take an extra Friday, or they'll take like, I'm going to take Friday and Monday, and they have like a 4-day weekend. And it's like, dude, you got 2 weeks of vacation time. Go to Jamaica, like go relax, recover, take that. That's what you should use it for. Use the PTO to actually recover a little bit. Take your mind out of work and your personal life. Grab the wife, grab the kids. Again, I'm probably the worst person to give this type of advice, but it just logically makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
Like take the break. Because even I do that from time to time. The last one I did was a trip to Italy.
How was that?
Fantastic. This was like my first success gift to myself and my dad, actually.
Very cool.
So my dad helped out a lot in the business early on. He helped answer phones, and he just did what he could to help support me because I bootstrapped. I had no capital, no nothing, and he helped a lot in the beginning.
Started on a credit card, right? I think I heard that story.
Yeah, quite literally. It was a credit card and my pickup truck. And I mean, I had a lot of knowledge. I went into it after being, having a mentor and all that. But yeah, we had no money. We had no backing, and no access to it either. So, but he helped during that period.
Yep.
We came up with an arrangement where he owned a duplex. And I relocated out here I knew I was going into business for myself. I didn't know what I was going into business for.
Yeah.
I had a couple different ideas going in my head. And I came out here and did some consulting work, and I remodeled his duplex. And the arrangement was that I could stay in the duplex rent free when I launched, right? For the initial period.
Yeah.
So that's how my dad helped get the company off the ground. That it was really important, and Refresh probably wouldn't be here because I would have had to, well, it might have been. I just would have had to do it in a different way.
But it's part of how the roots took place.
Yeah. So it was invaluable, getting everything going. So I finally, this was last year or the year before, decided I've always wanted to go to Italy, and on my dad's side, we're Sicilian.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's 100% Sicilian, and he's never been to the old country.
Yeah.
Right. And he's up there in years now. And so I wanted to go. I always wanted to go visit. And so that was my treat. And I treated him, and that was like my thank you for everything, his support, and not just the business, just in general, throughout my life. And that was my first splurge on anything. We did the whole thing right. We did first class.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah. We stayed in nice hotels. It was 3 weeks. We flew into Sicily. And I rented a car, which was a blast. You want to drive around somewhere, drive around Sicily, going up like the mountain roads and stuff.
Yeah.
There, seeing like castles and everything. That was a blast.
Man,
So, yeah, we drove
I'm
up.
getting goosebumps, actually. I would feel them coming in, just thinking about that.
Yeah. So
really cool.
But that's my favorite trip. So I did take that break.
And you probably unplugged a little bit. It's like sometimes
I made 2 phone calls in 3 weeks back to the States to talk work. They were 10 minutes long. That was it. 3 weeks. The business didn't exist. And that's what I want to teach franchisees to get to, right? Like, what else could you ask for? I know, so I'm in, home services, and I know all kinds of different contractors in the space. Most of them are completely slave to their company. They just are, and most of the contractors out there that work in, any kind of trade, that own a business, they don't own a business. They own a job. They 100% just own a job. If they so much as take a day off, their business starts falling apart. Right. And that's why I want to teach people how to do this in the right way, where they can go on vacation. Granted, they may not be able to walk away for years,
right?
But they can walk away for an extended period of time, and come back to a healthy business that's still thriving, that was still profitable while you were gone. That's my vision, my passion. That's why we're going to kill franchising, because I'm not even in it to make money. I don't actually give a fuck.
So you probably just enjoy it. I mean, it seems like you enjoy it. That's the reason you're here setting up.
I want to help other people.
Yeah, it's awesome.
The whole idea is like, I'm literally, I want money. Don't get me wrong. Everybody needs that to an extent, but like I've talked about this on other episodes. It's just a resource. For me, I'm a very simple person. Aside from that trip to Italy, right? I don't have many luxuries that I need. I'm single, don't have kids. I own my house. It's very modest. It's right. Like, what else do you need? I just need the freedom to do what I'm doing now. If I want to go on a trip, I can go on a trip. So I've already reached my peak success, except for buying a jet at some point, but that's for business purposes and to avoid the TSA.
Well, you touched on a few minutes ago, like before we started this, about your why, right? And it's like, that is what drives us, right? There's, at a certain point, everything is finite to this life we're living, or within this life. I shouldn't, say what you will about what's beyond, but we have this life that we're currently in, and you have to have something that drives you. And if you don't, there's no why there. So I was kind of touched when you mentioned that a few minutes ago about your why. Actually, I'm also just, I mean, to keep taking control of where the conversation goes, but talking about your old man, like, that's so cool that you got to do a trip with him. Like, my father passed away in 2015, and I would have loved, to do something like that with him, later in his life. It was kind of a sudden, just one day, but those are memories you'll cherish forever. And that's a big part of the why, is to be able to have moments like that. And, to the people that are special to you in your life. Super cool, man. That's
I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Right.
It was, he passed away on my birthday in 2015. That was kind of like shook my world up for a little bit. It was like, I say, like, the snow globe of my life was shaken up, and all of a sudden the snow's everywhere, and you can't. There was a lot of things happened at once in 1 year. It was like my sister had cancer at the time. My father passed away. I got divorced right around then. At the time, so just the life was just kind of a weird, turbulent space. But
that rule of threes right there.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. But honestly, dude, I've life has been generous to me, though. I mean, I've landed on my feet. For example, to be in franchising at all in the first place, I feel very blessed to have landed here. It wasn't like I sought out the franchising space. It found me, which I've heard many other people say that they had that similar experience getting into franchising. And it was, to me, it was kind of like a completion of a circuit. I kind of feel like I went through the wilderness of, a few different career paths that I didn't enjoy.
You mentioned one of those earlier, and I think it went around your dad passing. That's how you got into more of the sales type role, right?
I first got into sales. My father had been a rep for a number of different manufacturers in the apparel and footwear space, mostly outdoor apparel and winter footwear. And he had been a rep, it was a 1099 base. They worked for a few different manufacturers, and he got sick in 2010. I had just moved back from San Diego and was looking for work anyway. And at that point, I had just been a bartender. I didn't have much of a life mission at that point in my life, and kind of was just a drifter. But I found my way into sales through that. And, as it turned out, I did, well enough that the manufacturers agreed to let me stay on after, he decided he wanted to retire. And so I kind of just phased into that for a few years. I loved it. I was traveling a ton. I was covering the entire Northeast, so New England and New York. So I got to spend a lot of time on the road. Speaking of road trips, I was constantly road tripping around New England and New York. Especially in the wintertime, it was really busy selling winter apparel. So you're going to a lot of mom and pop stores, setting up was a rep for Kamek boots. I would set up all the Kamek winter boots, the back room of the store and talk about the line for this year. But it was a blast. I loved it. I'm still not sure why I got out of it. I took, bad advice that I should find something that was more stable and more predictable income, because it was all 1099 based and variable on how much it snowed that winter, So I got out of it and regretted it very much so. Then my father passed away that next year, but I decided I did want to go back into sales, but I kind of went through a few different phases of it. I was in, the business solutions world for a while. So I sold copiers and IT solutions and telecom solutions. And none of it, it wasn't a fit for my personality. It just didn't jive with me. So it was sort of out of the blue that a gentleman that I had worked with at Konica Minolta reached out and said, "Pete, I think there's a position here at Northeast Color that you would be fantastic for." I said, "Tell me more," and ended up finding my way into franchising. You
started with them early on, didn't you?
No, I was 2 years ago. So
okay.
It's 2 years. And honestly, I walked into a situation where I was in the right place at the right time. The heavy lifting of getting our name known in the franchise community had already been done. So I came into a situation where people already knew who Northeast Color was in the franchise space.
You guys do some big names, right? You guys do Planet Fitness?
We do. What I love about Planet Fitness is we talk about brands that have an interior branding experience, right? Where you walk in, an immersive brand experience. You walk in and you see the purple all over the walls, and that's, and everything, even the weight equipment is branded with their colors. So you're in a Planet Fitness, and we love brands like that. And we work, we typically look for brands that so what we do is signage and graphics. So we do their wall vinyls and a lot of the promotional signage for them.
How would a service company implement that aside from their location, right?
It's hard, right? It's not really a match. We get asked sometimes by service brands
recognition, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how you do that in something, because it's your consumers in their own home, right?
Yeah.
Or in my case, apartment communities. But I had a couple ideas for it. We do bath refinishing, right? And if you look at a bathtub, there's the bathtub brand little sticker thing, emblem that they put on, almost like on a car, right?
Yeah.
Some of them have that in the bottom corner on the bathtubs, right? And when we refinish it, we essentially are just, going over that. Sometimes they're removed, but for the most part, we're recoating the surface. Yeah. So I was thinking, if I got a little decal with my logo, right, and I put it, bathrooms and apartments are all the same for the most part, right? A standard bathroom is, you've got your toilet here, your vanity on your right, your bathtub on the left, right? Yeah. This is universal across the universe of apartments in the world. Right? So if I put my emblem and I put it on there like a little decal, it'll look just like it's the brand for the bathtub. And I mount that in the bottom corner of the bathtub so that when that new resident's in there and they're taking a shit, they're subconsciously absorbing my logo.
And it's refreshing there,
It's right there. And they have to stare at it the whole time they live.
There you go, branding.
Yep.
Always be branding. There are ways to do it, right? I'm brainstorming for you now. I'm trying to think of like some other ways, some leave behind or like.
We did that too, like during the the terrible event a couple of years ago that we can't mention because we want to be careful not to for the algorithm to pick up that word in either. Anyway, but during that thing, we had like little trifolds, like the hotels were doing, where they were pretty much wrapping the remotes in saran wrap, even though they did nothing special to them.
Yeah,
but we were doing certain stuff like that. We would have little trifolds, even in a vacant apartment. This unit was cleaned and disinfected by Refresh,
and it had the brand name on it.
Yeah. But the community would be more encouraged to leave it there because it would give a sense of comfort to the new resident coming in, right?
Yeah.
Even though all that really meant is we cleaned your apartment just like we always do.
Yeah.
But
the comfort of they did something to it. They must have disinfected something. Yeah.
Oh, I did that too. So early stage during that thing, I was looking at potential opportunities, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty. So we're okay. So we're obviously essential, quote, right? Every business is essential, but so we're an essential business at the time. So we're allowed to continue operating, right? But business is going down, right? We were impacted pretty heavily for the first few months. Nobody's moving out of their apartment in the middle of that situation, early stage, right? Everybody's just like, everything froze. So we're able to operate, but limited work, right? Everything just dropped. I'm like, okay, let's get creative. Let's pivot. I ended up spending, I don't know, a couple $1,000 on a pallet of approved disinfectant for the C virus. We get concentrate, which I still have, by the way. So if you need some disinfectants, I have a lot of them.
I'm good.
But we found one because this was a new variant. So, but it was approved for the original variant. I was able to get my hands on. By the way, this was sourcing. We had to call a whole bunch of places, finally find a place that had it, right? And I went and I loaded up the whole truck with this pallet full of concentrate, and we started doing some of the service. And we did do some. We did some jobs with it. I just didn't burn through that much concentrate. And so we started doing disinfecting services during that period for a short period of time, right? We'd go out to old folks' homes and stuff like that, clean the railings and things like that. But we probably weren't doing it right because you couldn't get the hydrostatic sprayers.
Okay.
By the way, I know, even though I'm not in restoration and stuff, I've spent quite a bit of time in these spaces. But anyway, you couldn't get that equipment. Everybody's buying them now, right? Yeah. Oh God, we made a mess during this. We went out and got backpack sprayers like you would for landscaping from Home Depot, right? Like the backpack battery powered mister sprayer things, right? It was the best alternative we could come up with and what we could get. And there was a demand for the service, right? So we did what we could. That was a horrible idea, though, by the way. In hindsight, we probably should have just got some pump sprayers and misted it on and wiped it off. But
well, there's no mistakes, there's just lessons, right?
Yeah. Oh, we still use the sprayer now for carpet cleaning.
I see you still got it. There you go. Not all's lost.
Yeah. But importance of pivoting during those types of things, right? We had to do something to keep everybody busy. Yeah. We actually had our bathtub refinishers out there because they were already familiar with the equipment. So like we went in, we scared the shit out of people. We're out there in our spray suits with full mask respirators. We got essentially gas masks, right? Because that's what we use in the refinishing side of things. And we're out there like, spraying down outside railings on properties.
Did Monsanto send you?
Yeah, exactly. You would think we were responding to like a nuclear threat or something. That was short-lived, but
yeah, the pivoting though, we all was a learning experience going through those last few years for sure. It was memorable, to say the least.
The world's not the same today. I talked about that on the episode with Lauren a little bit. I know I have like some social anxiety from it. There's just like, you're cooped up, everybody was like kind of just living in their living room and kitchen and not going out. And I did some stuff outside, but even that
that is one of the more fascinating parts of it, is that like we all had this sort of psychological experiment on ourselves of experiencing how too much of being at home can be
not healthy,
a drain somehow. It's like it. And, for example, I spend a lot of time working from home now, and I have mostly for the last 4 years worked from home, unless I'm traveling for work. The traveling helps me break that up. But, I deliberately, during long times when I'm going to be working from home for several weeks on end, I will force myself to get out of the house. I'll go to the gym. I'll go for a walk at lunchtime. I'll just make myself get outside, because otherwise, if I spend the entire week, Monday to Friday, just being home, by the end of the week, I just feel like cuckoo.
You need that connection. Yeah, at least some kind of social engagement somewhere, right? It could be going to the gas station, anything.
Yeah. And during COVID, we were just like all as a society at home.
Yeah.
A lot of at home. And we all sort of learned that about ourselves. But people got more introspective, though, I feel like, as a collective. That's one of there are silver linings I try to find all the time. And I feel like people learned to be more introspective. Not everyone, but many people did.
Sure.
We all took different ways of learning how to interact with social media. And so there are some, obviously.
Oh, I think there were some major cultural type shifts during that, right? Time will tell if they're good or bad. I don't know yet. I think a lot of them are good, though. And I think it put a lot of people down some rabbit holes, discovering things about the way things operate. And I think it opened some eyes. I honestly feel that there should have been a little bit more pushback to the overreach. I think that would have probably been a good thing, because it felt like almost like a test. Like,
how far can it get pushed?
Yeah. What can we do? Right. And everybody just tolerate it. All right. So I'm going to tell the story anyway. So I try to avoid stances, but there's a guy, I'm not going to name his restaurant or anything like that. And he owns a restaurant in the city that I'm at. Italian guy, Italian name to the restaurant. And the local government came in early during all this, right? And told him he had to shut down. And most places shut down. This guy looked at him and he said, look, I'll tell you what, when you come back, I hope you bring more guns than we have. So I patroned that guy's place quite a bit during this. And I think it was, by the way, the food's terrible. But the fact that he didn't just cave, and he's like, screw you, I'm not shutting my business down. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
The fact that he stood up, I wish we would have seen a little bit more of that. We did see it, but I don't think we saw it to the extent.
In Naples, Florida, my wife's parents live down there, so we go visit every now and then. There's a place, they have two grocery stores. One is called Oaks Farms, and there's a larger one, which is more of like a larger format shopping experience where they still have like live music in there, but that's called Seed to Table. But I mean, he made national headlines when he refused to enforce a mask mandate during said time period.
Thank you.
And he put up there. I remember seeing it on his door. He's like, I wish I could do justice to what it said, but something like the fine folks in the government have said that we're supposed to have a mask mandate, but we don't want to infringe on your rights, and that's why you have the right to do whatever you want to do when you come. Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but and people were flocking to go into Oaks Farms, and this is in Naples, Florida.
Yeah, the ones that did do it gained tons of business.
Yeah.
that tells you what public opinion really was. And again, not a political show.
We've been flirting with that line, though.
Yeah, I know.
We said we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, I've been saying it the whole time I've been doing the shows. I try to steer clear of that stuff because today it's odd. That I can talk about is, you have these decisions to make as a business owner, and really a business shouldn't be making these decisions in any way. And I'm not. That's why this isn't part of my business, right? This is a separate show. That's my show. That is not associated with my business. It is sponsored by my franchise company, but but you see what I'm saying. Like, so brands shouldn't really be taking political positions. That's my opinion, right? As a brand, like Nike supporting XYZ or doing this, they shouldn't do that. First off, who cares? It's the public that should make those decisions. But we have a decision as business owners when we talk publicly at all. It's almost, we're self-censoring, and it's frustrating when you have to do that. But you want to do it because you can't appease both sides though, right? It's that decision to make is how vocal do you get about your opinion when asked, or do you just shut the fuck up and sit there and just not voice your opinion at all, right?
It's an interesting
It's a
piece of how we, and I have opinions, and I'm not fiery about having large disagreements with people and puff my feathers out, and and to be perfectly frank, I have been on both sides of the aisle in my adult life, and it's I'm friends with people on both sides of all, and I don't fight with anyone on anything political. It's not worth it to fight. I'd rather see everyone. The cliche go, sing Kumbaya and but I'd love to see us have, so we're all trying to win. We're trying to win hearts and minds here, right? We're trying to come together. We're trying to form coalitions as a society, and the point is not to be mad at each other. The point is actually to get along and to do what's best. But we're kind of squabbling over what is best, and that's what it comes down to. But to your point about not taking stances, I'm very careful at all times not to be
divisive in either way, right? And again, so we're self-censoring, and that's the worst part about it, because I think open dialogue is really important. But at the same time, it's not worth the headache, right? I do a lot more value, or I can offer a lot more value to the world by getting people to adopt in my franchise model, making them wealthy and letting them put their kid in their private school, or, make it past the coming recession. And not political. That's just coming. Right. So if I can help people, get into a better financial position, I've done more value for the world. But if I get canceled, or, I don't want to hinder that. I want to be able to provide that value. And so it's a weird line you're on sometimes where.
What I find fascinating, this is one of those goalpost moving things about the cancel culture. Do you remember a couple of years ago when Neil Young removed all of his music from the Spotify catalog because he didn't agree?
I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
So they decided they were not going to cancel Joe Rogan's podcast. They said it was, they were not going to cancel it. And Neil Young said, well, I'm going to pull him. He pulled his music off. And I would love to see a debate between 1971 Neil Young, the free speech advocate, which he was very much then. And then 2020 Neil Young, 50 years later, a little older and crotchetier, and suddenly not a free speech guy anymore. I would love to see that debate. That's kind of but again, as I said, I've been on both sides of it.
You want to see an extreme shift that I'm noticing. So this guy, you want to talk about somebody really hard, more left leaning, Bill Maher. Have you noticed, this is all recent, but all of a sudden he's and he'll say it himself. He's like, I didn't leave the left left me. They've gone so far in one direction that I am now a center.
Yeah.
And he's got a point there. So you're talking about moving goalposts, right? No matter where you stand in here, it's kind of doing that both directions. You have one side of the spectrum that is getting pretty cultish, around the orange hair. And then you've got the other side of the spectrum that is literally so completely lost that they will advocate for a man that probably needs to wear diapers. I mean, it's insane.
It's a divided time, but and it's like we've had divided times before. It's fascinating to live through it, to say the least. But this year is going to be entertaining. I think we'll find out what happens. But ultimately, though, I would love to see a greater coalition of our society as a country
cooperating together,
find common ground, and not be.
What's funny is I think that's most people. That's what's crazy. It's just the really loud voices on both sides, right? So they're a minority. They're not on both sides.
Yeah.
Most people are somewhere in that middle. Most of them have more in common than they don't. It's just these really loud voices. If we could get, I'm all for free speech, say it all day. But if we could get some more people in here in the middle, to speak louder, I think it'd do a lot of good. And people, we would actually be able to solve some problems instead of, because the politicians are just catering to the extremes, and everybody in the middle is politicians are only catering to whoever pays them. But but you get my point. Yeah, I agree with you. If there's more common ground and more local solutions, more involvement at the local level, the community level, society would be doing a lot better right now. Like, we got to get off the federal level, budget, right? Like, no more federal spending. Like, just do away with federal income tax. Do away with it. Just shrink this thing down, right?
You want a rabbit hole?
I would say get rid of it altogether, right? But get that out.
I don't think we had it until 1913. It didn't exist.
Well, no, the federal government's been around since 1970s or 1776.
I'm talking the federal income tax.
Or actually 18 something when they issued or actually drafted the Constitution. 1776 was the founding, anyway. We had the
Constitution. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, it was shortly after 17. I might be in the 1800s, but 1913, you're talking about the income tax.
Correct. Yeah.
So that also created the IRS, I believe,
or the Federal Reserve.
I don't know. Everybody out there, read the book "The Creature from Jekyll Island." It'll tell you the whole story. But have you read that?
I have not, but I have heard of it. It's been on my to-do list.
It tells the whole story about it. The central bankers all getting together and meeting on Jekyll Island, which is in Georgia, and essentially drafting it's the 13th Amendment, right?
I don't know what number it was.
Yeah, I think it's 13th Amendment. Then they passed it in the dead of night on like Christmas Eve or some shit too, with like nobody in office. All right, now we're definitely getting down. This isn't even a conspiracy theory. These are all really pretty much fact.
I think Woodrow Wilson was president then and ushered it through, kind of, as you were saying, I think Congress was taking off for holiday break, and it was kind of like again, don't quote me on any of this. I think this was, but I think it was like a very backdoor kind of thing that the Federal Reserve was creating.
Well, he apologized for it on his exit speech. You can go read the transcript on it. It's like, I'm going to paraphrase like hell. I fucked up and gave away our country. It's pretty much, he's like, yeah.
Speaking of U.S. presidents and Ohio and road trips, I would love to do a road trip at some point to see where William McKinley and Rutherford B. Hayes, I think there was a couple other Ohio presidents in the late 1800s, but it's a road trip I wanted to do for years, just to go see those places in Ohio. So that's a shout out.
I don't think I've seen them. Do you know where in Ohio they're?
I think it's Northeast Ohio.
Okay.
But yeah, so a little historical tidbit that William McKinley and Rutherford B. Hayes, who both became U.S. presidents, served in the same regiment in the Civil War.
Really?
Yeah. The something Ohio regiment. Yeah. But So what are the odds of that, right? And I think Rutherford B. Hayes was his
probably
commanding
pretty good,
officer
right? They
for
probably
McKinley.
had the same social circle. So the more you look into history, right? At least when I look into history, this is what I start seeing. I start seeing major similarities to the way things operate today. Like our first president, George Washington, was not the hero everybody thinks he was. He was actually he was very much like a modern politician that they put up onto a pedestal. From my understandings, like, you know, he wasn't actually that great of a general. He recklessly killed a lot of his soldiers by poor decision making in his strategy. And his motives during the war and throughout his presidency were very self-enriching.
Interesting.
And real estate acquisition, so land.
That's a rabbit hole I have not gone down.
Yeah, check that one out. So that's all I'm going to get into it. But like when you get back, you do start realizing that even then it wasn't that different. The reason I feel he was probably the first president is the propaganda to get people to support secession, right? And that made him a really popular general. And so he was kind of like a poster child. And so he was like, you know, today's equivalent of like an athlete, right? Like a superstar or something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why he was the first president, is really because he wanted popularity contests. And they worked a lot of propaganda around him to get support. And so he had the influence to become the first president.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, I mean, look at his first stuff he did in office. Hi, I just fought an entire war about taxation from a foreign government. Now I'm going to implement a whiskey tax. What? Like literally, first thing he does is the first president is, hey, I'm going to start taxing you guys, even though we just had an entire war over this.
Is that how the Whiskey Rebellion came about? That's what, yeah.
Now a word from our sponsor.
I'm Refreshman, and I'm here to empower you to take charge of your destiny. Are you tired of working for someone else? Do you dream of making a difference in your community and unleashing your full potential? Then look no further than Refresh Franchising. With us by your side, you can start your own heroic business venture with the unwavering support and cutting-edge resources you need to conquer your goals. Our franchise model is like a super serum that will give you the strength to succeed. Refresh provides extensive training, ongoing mentorship, and an established brand with a loyal customer base. Plus, you'll become part of a heroic league of entrepreneurs who serve as allies on your journey towards greatness. And the best part, you won't have to waste time building your business from scratch like some kind of neophyte. With Refresh Franchising, you'll hit the ground running at lightning speed and unlock the key to heroic financial success. So gather your courage, summon your inner superhero, and visit refreshfranchising.com to launch your heroic franchise journey. Always remember, together, we can achieve greatness.